Welcome to For the Long Run, the podcast exploring the why behind what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated. I'm your host, Jonathan Levitt. Through personal and professional connections in the running world, I have the privilege of getting to know some amazing athletes. I've always been fascinated by the psychological aspect of running, and this podcast is aimed at exploring this and much more. I hope you enjoy. Welcome back. Today I have Jacky Hunt-Broersma joining from Cary, North Carolina. Jacky, thanks so much for jumping on to chat today.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
For sure. So first question, who is Jacky?
Who is Jacky? Oh, that's a good question. I'm an amputee ultrarunner, obviously based out in Cary, North Carolina. I am a cancer survivor. That's how I lost my leg quite a few years ago. And I took up running 4 years ago. And fallen in love with it, and I quite enjoy pushing boundaries. So I've been pushing the limits on how far I can go, what trails I'm running. My favorite, I'm more of a trail runner than a road runner. That's kind of my favorite to do. And yeah, that's kind of me in a bit of a nutshell.
And where are you from?
I'm originally from South Africa. And then we moved to the Netherlands, and then from the Netherlands we went to the UK, and then we've moved to the US. So my accent's a little bit of a mixture of everything, because we kind of we like traveling and exploring and things like that. So yeah, so the US
That's
is
awesome.
home now. Yep.
Cool. So we were connected originally at the Sunto Multisport or Sunto Elite Team Camp in Utah a couple of weeks ago. And you spoke as one of the athletes on the team at sort of like the closing dinner after a very delicious pizza meal that we had. And you told this incredible story of facing adversity, being scared, and wanting to do it and push through, and sort of defy the odds. So I think that was like a 30-minute story that you told there. So maybe a little long for this medium, but I know you do a lot of speaking, and so I'd love to hear or I'd love to hear you share a little bit of that with our audience to sort of like frame this conversation.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the race that I kind of spoke about, Sunto, was one of the trail races I've done. And when I originally started running, I kind of just started, I thought, because I wasn't a runner before at all. I hated running, if I'm totally honest. And so it was weird that I became a runner as an amputee. And when I started, I genuinely thought I'd kind of stick to 5Ks. That would kind of be the distance I'd go. And the more I ran, the more I kind of fell in love with it. And the more I felt like I could be pushing boundaries. And I kind of, on the whim, I wanted to try some trail running, because I had some friends that did some trail running. And I was told, you can't. You'd be silly to run trails as an amputee, because you'd fall. The prosthetics aren't designed for trail running. And of course, my personality has always been, if someone tells me I can't do it, I really want to try and do it. I'm like, why not? Yes, I'm an amputee, but it doesn't mean I can't do everything everyone else is doing. So I'm going to give it a shot. And if I fall flat on my face, then I fall flat on my face. And that's kind of my attitude with pushing everything and pushing boundaries. And it's been an incredible journey, because it's taught me what I can do and what I'm capable of. And as an amputee even, I'm capable of so much more. And I don't have to be scared. And yes, I have fallen flat on my face on the trails. I've fallen hard. But I've kind of just got up and dusted myself off and carried on. And it's just like, everyone that kind of gets into trail running, you're going to wipe out, you're going to fall, and it's just part of the journey. I mean, I've taken on trail races and it's been a fascinating journey, just because there aren't many amputee trail runners out there. So it's been a process of prosthetics, because, as I said earlier, the prosthetics are designed for road running. So the issues you have on trail is like the tread doesn't last. I mean, the first blade I had, the tread literally lasted 5 miles. on the trail, and it was done. It literally, I had worn straight through the tread. There was nothing left. I was
What
like,
was the
okay, this is
distance race?
yeah, and it's just like, yeah, this is gonna be interesting. Yeah, that's not gonna last. So when you're kind of looking at doing ultra marathons and doing 50 miles and longer, you kind of think, yeah, you need something a little bit more that's actually going to last. And it's been a fun journey to kind of work with the team and kind of get them to understand what I'm doing, because that's the other thing, is getting people to understand that you're not only doing trail running, which is crazy on a prosthetic, but you're also pushing the limits of going further. So you're doing 50 miles, 100 miles, and everyone's like, why would you want to do that? Are you crazy? And it's just kind of, yeah, getting through that. And one of the first trail races, which I'd spoken about at Sunto, which was one of the, I had signed up for a 40 miler, but it was also a trail race, and it was the first trail race I'd ever done on my blade. So I thought I'd want to try it. But I mean, they had a half marathon distance, but of course I had to decide to go for the 40 miles, because I'm like, why not? Let's just see how far. And by then I'd done a marathon, so I was like, yeah, I've done a marathon, so it's a few extra miles on top of that. It'd be fine.
Just a few.
It's just a few more extra miles. And it was challenging. It was a great learning curve, because it had been raining for about a week before the race. So the trail, they actually had to change the trail, the course, because some of the parts of the trail you can run on because it was just underwater, and it was just full of mud. So I thought, well, we'll see what happens. And very early on in the trail, I realized that my tread had absolutely no grip in the mud. So it was pretty much, I was sliding from side to side on this trail. And it was hilarious, because I had to think on my feet, and I had to be creative. And there were parts where I actually had to get on my butt and kind of slide down, because it was very much, you were kind of just going up and down the whole time. And there were certain parts that had such a steep downhill that I had absolutely no way of staying up straight. So I had to bum shuffle my way down. So I got to the finish line with mud all down my side and everything. But it was fun. It was a good trail race. But it was, it, and I was determined, because a lot of people was like, why didn't you just walk off? Why didn't you just quit and just say, you know what, you can't do it? And I'm like, I'm very much of the person that I will rather finish absolutely last on a race than quit in the middle of it, because I'm like, I'm there to race. I want to finish. I want to get to the finish line. And so I did. I mean, I got to the finish line. I finished, and yeah, it took some creativity, but I got there.
What does it mean to you when somebody says you're crazy to do that, or you can't do that?
I normally laugh about it because my first question is why not, and I've kind of got used to people saying that I'm crazy, and I it's more of a thing that I think a lot of people say that because they don't understand. So I try to explain what I'm trying to do, and I think people have just become a little bit more like, oh yeah, that's typical. Jacky's doing that again. It's fine. I'm sure she'll be finished. I mean, I remember when I did Trans Rockies, the stage race in Colorado, which is totally brutal trail race. And I even had people actually had said, when I actually finished the race, when I'd been done and I actually let everyone know I finished, quite a few people actually said to me, they said, well, we didn't think you'd finish. And I was like, whoa, why? So it's great to kind of just show people what you can do and what you can accomplish and kind of prove them wrong. And that's just my mission, is just to prove people wrong and say, why not? Why can't I finish it? Why can't I do well at it? And I'm here to stay, and I'm having fun with it.
You posted a throwback from that from Trans Rockies about a
Yeah,
week ago with the caption, "Being challenged in life is inevitable. Being defeated is optional."
exactly.
And you have the biggest smile on your face as you're basically sledding downhill,
Yep,
and it like that's why we do it. Like
exactly.
it's for the challenge, and um it's for the euphoria of pushing further than you thought possible. I'm wondering, has that been your mantra, your approach, your attitude, as a result of where you are today, or have you been of that mindset your whole life?
I don't know if I've been that my whole life actually. I just think um, with going into trail running and how hard it can be and how challenging it is, that part just excites me so much, and it's just fun, just proving everyone wrong, and just doing these crazy things. And like you said, we're in there for it is fun. It is fun watching what you can achieve. And it's not necessarily about, well, for me, it's not necessarily about the finishing time. It's more about the challenge that I'm going through, the obstacles I'm kind of going through, because, oh man, with Trans Rockies, I had so many challenges. It was crazy. Um, but I was still smiling because I was still having one heck of a time. And yeah, and that is just incredible. And I feel so lucky and grateful to be able to go on this journey and just be where I am today. And that's all thanks to running. And it kind of has changed my perspective on life and and everything. And it's just been amazing.
Is gratitude something you intentionally practice?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely every
What does
day.
that look like?
I'm just, I mean, it's just one when I kind of when I lost my leg to cancer and stuff, is a gratitude for being alive. And you take life for granted every day, and when you kind of faced with something like this, it's like, well, this is it. What have I achieved in my life? What have I done? And it kind of gets you to really look at your life. And yes, there are elements where you're angry and you're frustrated. And I still get it now, where I'm frustrated with my blade. It was a hard trail run, and I blame it all on my being an amputee and all that. But then there's the other element of being, I'm able to do this rather than sitting in a wheelchair, rather than just not doing anything. I'm actually able to do this, and I'm alive, and that's kind of what I look at.
That's awesome. Um, when when did you decide you wanted to run 100 miles?
Um, well, I was registered because I did Umstead 50 miler last year, and when I crossed that
Hmm.
finish line, I was like, I want to do this again, but I'm coming back for the 100. So I had,
I want to do it twice.
yeah, I'm like, it was the strangest experience. It's the first time I've ever had that in a race, where I've actually crossed the finish line with a bigger smile on my face, and I'm like, I'm going to do this again. And so yeah, so then as soon as the registration opened, I signed up for the 100 miler. So it was on the radar for a few months, for obviously for a while, but then with COVID-19 happening, they cancelled the race. So I was gutted, but in a part I was kind of a little relieved, because my training hadn't really been there. It's just life got in the way, and just a few things that happened, that I wasn't where I wanted to be with my training anyway. So I thought, okay, fine, I can kind of postpone it. But sorry, my voice is going a little bit strange. Sorry about that. And so then, but I still wanted to race. I was like, I still want to kind of achieve it. And then I'd seen somewhere, it was the only race I'd seen that actually offered a 100-mile virtual race. And so I decided, well, it was actually, I signed up for it. I think I signed up for about a week and a half before I actually did the race, before I did the 100 mile. I was like, oh, you know what? Let me just sign up for it. So I signed up for it, and I was like, okay. And they had a date where you had to have done, I mean, you could choose with a 100 miler, you could do it over like a 2 week period, I think it was, or you could do it all in once, all at one go. And it had to be done by a certain date. So I was like, okay, I've got a week and a half to decide when I'm doing this. And that's kind of how it came. It's typical me. I kind of do things a lot on the whim a lot of the times. It's just my personality. And then I was I was like, okay, I've signed up for it now. Am I going to really do it? And I was like going, and I was like, oh yeah, my training hasn't been there. It's not going to be. And so the Wednesday night before I actually did the race, I actually said, okay, I'm definitely doing it. Um, so I had to decide, like, yeah, it was on the treadmill. It was like fueling. I kind of winged it a little bit, and that's kind of how I did it, and just decided, well, I'm going to do it that Friday, and go on the treadmill and went for it.
So getting on the treadmill and going for
Yeah.
an 8 mile run is one thing, or a 5 mile run is another. I believe that treadmill miles are actually you run 1 mile, you've actually run 10 miles. So you ran 1,000 miles on the treadmill.
Yeah.
What was that like? What was it like getting onto the treadmill for the first couple of steps?
It was weird because the longest I'd ever done on my treadmill was 10 miles. So I knew this was going to be challenging. And I've always been very open about my treadmill running. I'm like, yeah, I've got this bit of a love-hate relationship going on with my treadmill, because I'm like, yeah, I'd rather, to be honest, I mean, who wouldn't? I'd rather be on the trails, but sometimes you have
Right.
to. And it's a great training tool. And I mean, I've actually, after this 100 miler, I've actually fallen in love with my treadmill from spending so much time on it. I was like, oh yeah, okay, this isn't bad. But the first few miles, like when I hit 10 miles, I was like, oh my goodness, this is the longest I've ever run on this treadmill. I'm like, I've still got another 90 to go. And you think, oh dear, I've got another 90. How am I going to do this? And you genuinely kind of start. And and it was interesting. I watched a lot of Netflix. I had a lot of entertainment to keep me going.
And so you did it in what, just under 24
I
hours?
did, yeah, in 23:38 to be exact. Yay!
And that was a record, right?
It was, yes. I was the first amputee to ever be able to do, amputee to do it. So that was exciting. And I was like, oh my goodness, I couldn't believe I did it. Um, yeah, it was very cool that I could do it.
What was the hardest part about it?
The hardest part was just the mental part. For me, it was like my body was fine, absolutely fine. I could keep going. It was the mental aspect of being on the treadmill, I think, just the same movement. At one point, I was actually starting to get really tired, but like I felt like I was kind of nearly falling asleep, because I think it was just because I was literally just like, it was the same movement. And it's like, when you sit in a car and someone's driving, it's that same monotonous movement that actually makes, I always fall asleep in the car. And it kind of felt like that. At one point, I was like, okay, I am going to fall off this treadmill. I need to kind of wake myself up a little bit, because this is ridiculous. So then I kind of started playing a little bit with the elevation, and a little bit with the speed, and just to mix things up a little bit, because I was
Do
like,
some
I need to kind
fartleks.
yeah. So yeah, and I mean, at about mile, yeah, it was mile 62, well, the 100K point. I felt like I was done. I was I am so done, and I genuinely thought, you know what, no one will care if I kind of got off at 100K. I'm like, 100K is still a really long distance. And by then it would have been the longest run I've ever run. So I'm like, you know what? I can still pat myself on the back. It will be fine. I can get, and it is weird how like in these distances I've learned, it's like how you need to start, like I was talking to myself all the time. I sound totally crazy, but I was trying to convince myself to keep going. Um, and and I knew I'd be really disappointed if I actually got off and just stopped. So I just kept pushing through. I was like, I need to get through it. And then by like mile 70, it's weird. My body kind of just kicked. I suddenly found new energy. And I had the last 30 miles was the best part of the whole run. I just felt strong. It was weird. My pace was really good. And I just kept going. I was like, okay, this is weird, but let's go with it.
That's so cool. I think that's the segment that we live for. Like would you call that flow?
Yeah.
Were you in that state?
Yeah, I was in that state totally.
I talked with Magda Boulay on the podcast. I don't know, one of like the first 15 episodes, and she was like, maybe you only experience that once or twice or a handful of times in your life, but when you do, it's that's why we do it, and it's that feeling that is just so incredible.
Yeah, it's the best feeling in the world. It's just like you can't describe it. It just feels amazing, and everything just clicks, and you just feel really good.
So, what were you thinking about in that moment?
What was I thinking? I I guess I was a little bit concerned that I was feeling so good. I was like, okay, this feels strangely like, yeah, this just feels. But I was smiling because I knew I was kind of I was way over the halfway point, and I was going to do this, and I was like, I couldn't unless my blade broke or the treadmill stopped, because that was the other concern, was my treadmill, because we'd only run on it for 10 miles. And I'd had the treadmill already for like 4 years. So I wasn't sure, like, was the motor actually going to burn out, or because it just, we never switched the treadmill off. It just kept going. So I was a little bit worried, was it going to overheat and stuff? And I'm like, can you imagine you get to mile 99 and the treadmill says, I'm done. I'm like, I would just cry.
Yeah. You get outside and you just start running.
Yeah, you just start running. And then it's like, you know what, I'm just finishing it.
One of the things that I was curious, or that I'm curious to know about, is and you've done some incredible things already. What are some of the big scary goals that you still have for yourself?
Ooh, I've got quite a few scary goals. One
Let's
of
hear
them is
it.
like, pardon?
Yeah, let's hear it.
One of them is I'd love to do like the Tahoe 200. So that's kind of on my radar to do a 200. It would be totally crazy, but it would be just something. It's something that totally excites me, and then I know I should go after it. I've also got other like smaller goals, like I'm trying to qualify for Western State. And I'd love to, absolutely, one of my big goals is to kind of get to UTMB at some point, which is going to take a lot of more mountain running. I'm going to have to take on a lot more of the hardcore trail races, even more of what I've been doing. So it should be all fun. Hopefully there's going to be some big things happening.
What are the logistical pieces that people might not consider, that you do have to account for?
Do you just mean like from a prosthetical point of view, I guess? Man, it's just doing all these like really hard races. It's just you don't know how if your blade is going to hold up to the challenge. I'm still relying on a piece of equipment that could actually at any point snap, or something could go horribly wrong with it, or the valve could break. There's always those kind of things that I kind of have to think about. So I always carry some duct tape with me when I'm running. Um, which sounds weird, but I've actually had to use it on the trails before, because I was out on a 20-mile training run, and my valve, it actually literally just popped out. And so I had to kind of get creative and think, okay, shoot. And I was kind of on a trail in the middle of nowhere, and it's like it would have taken someone longer to get to me than me kind of carrying on and finishing. So I kind of had to get a little bit creative and take my leg together just so I could get the run done and get to my car and things like that. So it's it's kind of, so the logistics for me is always a little bit different because I have to think of all these like elements of stuff that goes wrong. So I'm always carrying extra kit with me and creative, and I'm still learning as I go because I've only been running for 4 years and only recently been taking on all these hardcore races. So it's kind of, yeah, it's a kind of a learning process. And then of course, because I've got 2 kids, and it's kind of working them into the whole picture, especially when I'm going on all these adventures and stuff. Trying to kind of, husband and I, because he runs too and he does ultra marathons, so we kind of have to play a tag team and stuff when we're training, and kind of like I'll go out for my run, come back, then he'll go out, or we do it the other way around. So someone's with the kiddos, and yeah, so it's kind of always a bit crazy.
How old are the kids?
I've got a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old.
So they fully understand what's going on, right?
They do. They kind of the funny thing with my kids is it's kind of become a bit normal, and they is when I did the 100-miler, they were like, I was like, oh yeah, Mommy's doing this great thing, and I'm trying to explain to them, and they're like, oh, here you go again, Mommy, you're doing something crazy again. So it's like, it's not become a big deal. They're like, oh yeah, my mom runs, and my son's teacher, they had, because there'd been a news article about it, and the teacher had like said, oh yeah, we heard your mom did this great thing, and my son just went, oh yeah, she just did a thing on the treadmill. It's no big deal. She just ran.
I mean, you just ran more miles than, most people run in 2 weeks.
Yeah. So yeah, their concept of what I do is just, it's funny because they just see it as just a normal part of life. And I'm like, well, actually, it's not quite normal. It's not everyone does this.
What do you hope they take away from it?
I really hope that they realize anything's possible. They can achieve whatever they want to. I never put any pressure on them to run. Sometimes my little girl who's 7, she'll go out and run with me, and sometimes she doesn't want to, and it's absolutely okay. I just want them to find their own path, but I want them to find their passion, what they're really passionate about, and kind of push with that and just keep going and not make excuses, and yeah, and just whatever they want to achieve, they can.
Tell me more about the dynamic between you and your husband, where you're both training. How do you make that work?
It's interesting. I don't know. We've figured it out somehow. I mean, he's very much a morning person, so it actually works out quite nice because I'm not a morning person. I need at least about 4 cups of coffee before I'm actually quite awake and I can actually do anything. So he's out early and he kind of goes and does his run and comes back, and then I'm ready and then I can go. So we kind of tag that way. For racing wise, we used to try and do a few races together, but it gets quite complicated with getting sitters for the kids and just kind of the logistics around the children. So we tend to kind of look at each other's year and like, okay, I want to do that race, and then he'll pick a race on a different weekend. So it kind of makes sure that we kind of not racing on the same weekend, so we can kind of look after the kids and then fit in training wise kind of around that. So we have like we'll have a month where we kind of every weekend one of us is racing and doing something, or kind of, so we kind of just work it that way around.
Cool. One of the things that I like to ask about on this podcast is about balance and balancing running and life and relationships. And Lindsay Krause was on the podcast recently and described her relationship with balance as being a triangle. And the triangle is not always the same size. Sometimes it's obtuse, and sometimes it's equilateral and whatnot. So what does your triangle look like?
Oh man, my triangle varies too all the time. It's never the same. I mean, I love the way she's described it because it's so true, and you kind of have to be flexible, I think, and we make it work somehow, and it is making sure that, especially when you kind of have kids in the whole picture and things, is making sure that they're happy too, and that your running isn't like taking everything over and the whole, and remembering to kind of have that quality family time too and working that in. So it kind of, we have to be flexible, so it kind of changes quite a lot in the household, and other things come in the way and things like that, so you kind of have to make space for something else. And so I'll try, yeah, it's always changing.
Cool. So you work with a couple of brands. What's the relationship there like? How did that evolve?
I mean, I work with some fantastic brands, and I've been really, really lucky. And I mean, they've all been really supportive of my journey. And it's been great. I mean, I kind of, different brands kind of came on board via social media and things like that, when they kind of been seeing what I've been doing, and wanting to kind of get involved and support me on my journey. And it's always fantastic when brands kind of reach out and ask if they can support you in all your goals and things like that. And so I feel very, very lucky with the brands that I actually work with.
Awesome. What's one thing that, or a couple of things that you know now that you wish you knew when you started running?
Oh, that's a good question.
Or what are some of the lessons you've learned over and over, and maybe eventually it'll stick?
Eventually it will stick. Not to run it like 12 o'clock in the afternoon when it's like humid, like crazy humid. I still do that, and I think, oh, why have I gone out?
Right.
I mean, for me, it's been a big learning curve about, it's just different, because I've had to learn to be flexible, because in the beginning I was a bit of a stubborn runner, and I'm not always very good with listening to my body. And I think us as runners, I think everyone makes that mistake. We kind of just push through. And I've always been very good with pushing through when I should be backing off a little bit. I mean, it's just because I've always wanted to kind of be like a regular runner, but because I run with a prosthetic, there's different elements. Sometimes my stump just takes a real bad beating. It can be for any reason. It could be that it was too hot, and I wasn't wearing the right socks, and it just caused blisters, or I didn't put my liner on the right way, and it caused some friction on my stump. And it's just like there's so many elements. And as I've kind of gone along, I've learned more of what the signs are and things like that, but I don't always listen. And sometimes I put it at the back of my head and think, oh yeah, it's fine. It will be fine. We'll just push through. And then it kind of knocks me off my training for an extra week instead. Whereas if I'd listened, I could have just taken a bit of like a day, 2 days off, and then gone back into it. So it's just being a bit more, I'm learning to be a little bit more patient with myself, and but it's progress.
I think that holds true for all of us. What's one thing that you wish others knew about you?
Oh, what others knew about me? I don't know. I think a lot of people know quite a lot about me already. Because I'm always very open. I mean, let me think about this one. It's just, I wish I'm not the why I run. I think it's a lot. I'm not out there to kind of. I want to say I'm not out there to prove myself, but it's just I'm there to run. I'm doing a lot of my running. I do it for myself, and I'm very much I'm incredibly stubborn, and I don't know. A lot of people might actually pick that up from my posts and stuff that I'm always posting. I just never quit, and a lot of and I'm always trying to be really positive about all the running I'm doing, but there is an element of where it gets really hard, and it's the side that I normally don't share. because I'm trying to show that, well, I can still get it done, and I'm trying to put it more of a positive light. And sometimes I think maybe I should be show that side of it a little bit more, because a lot of people I've had people that stop me in the street and go, oh wow, you make running look so easy. And I've had this knee issue, and I genuinely have had people come out and they say, well, I've had this knee issue. I think because you make it look so easy that I'm going to have my leg amputated and start running. And I'm like, whoa, wait. So there's a lot of that. There's a struggle there, but it's also that I never quit. I always want to do my best. I work incredibly hard, and that's the part that people don't see, is I am out there all the time. I'm always training. I'm always doing other strength training and things like that. It doesn't come easy. It's just I'm working really, really hard.
Yeah, I think that's an important part. The upside of social media is you can see the highlights and the accomplishments,
Yeah.
but the downside is you don't see the work that it takes to get there. You often don't see the I don't want to call it failures, but the lower points along the journey. And I think a trend lately has been, and I hesitate to call it a trend, but something that's been happening more lately is showing the full journey. And so I don't know, maybe it's worth sharing the low points, and less for like, oh, woe is me, and more for like, this is real. This is how I'm doing.
Yeah.
Last year I went through a fairly challenging breakup, and also lost my grandfather. And
oh, wow.
And I was like raw and open about more so the experience with loss. But I don't know, I feel like I got closer to my followers, my friends, whatnot, than ever before. And I literally got messages from people saying, wow, thanks for sharing this. I thought your life was perfect. and they weren't saying that. It's wild. They weren't saying that to be an ass. They were like, oh, because you weren't sharing the downside.
Yeah. It's so
that
true.
exists.
And I've always I've always tried to be quite open, but it's more about like, there is so little space to kind of like tell what your accomplishment is. So you end up like posting, well, I've achieved that. That's what I've done, and things like that.
Right.
But it's like, there is more to the journey, getting from one point to the next. And it's like, yeah, and I totally agree. It's about being a bit more open about the entire journey rather than just one small little element. Because it's not a perfect journey. It's not an easy journey by all means. I mean, it takes a lot of hard work. It takes dedication. It takes solving issues, and just to get to that end point.
Definitely. I think that's a good place to wrap up. Thanks so much for chatting today. And where can people find you if they want to follow along with your journey?
I'm post mostly on Instagram, so it's NC Runner Jacky on Instagram.
Awesome. Jacky, thanks so much.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Nice to talk to you.
For sure.
Thanks. Bye.
That's it for today's episode. Like many long runs, it's sad when it has to end. I hope you join in next week on For the Long Run. And in the meantime, happy trails. If you've enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to me if you shared it so that others can find it and enjoy it too.